Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to my vlog where I talk about whatever I want. So today I want to talk about something that has been right close to my heart for a long time, but especially these last few years as the subject matter has just kind of escalated. And that is the issue of fear. And that's a really broad, big subject. But let's just kind of dive right in, and I'll try not to go too terribly long here. Grab your cup of coffee or your soda or whatever it is and just sip on it and come with an open mind and see what you think. So, if you know me like at all, then you would know that one of the things that I hate the most, that I just cannot stand, is when people get sucked into these fear traps, and including myself. I hate when I get stuck into a fear trap. And it's really easy to do, especially these last couple of years. There's all this crazy stuff going on, all of these very staunch and separated groups that are afraid of the other. And it just it's caused so much division. And anyway, so the core of it all though is really centered around fear. And one of the things that drove me crazy the most, and still does to this day, with Christianity to be specific, because that's what I come from, is you have this book that is 100% relied on. And within this book, over 300 times, the Lord says, do not fear. And yet, over and over again, all throughout history, Echo, I'm not going to play with you right now. No. She's trying to... Anyway, all throughout history, we have been given opportunity after opportunity to operate out of this fear. And it was the fear of going to hell. It's the fear of people who didn't believe like you did, fear that they would infect your young people or people who weren't as educated. I mean, it just there was a reason to fear every single year. Right? And this last couple of years, it's all around getting a certain immunization. And then even the fear of the individuals who got the immunization, shedding on those who did not. The list literally could go on forever. Literally forever. But what I find so interesting is that fear creates so much hatred. And I know, because when I am in fear about something, or when I don't understand something, I think my first initial fear is sort of that fear of rejection, to the fear of doing things wrong, the fears of, I don't know, so many things. Basically, it's just the fear of the unknown. There's a whole lot of fear of the unknown, right? Because there's so many things that we think are hard and fast rules, and yet there are so many examples on every level of how there's always some kind of an exception to those rules. Maybe you haven't noticed that, but me being the person that I am and growing up how I grew up, I notice those things. I notice when because basically I was brought up to be this super rule follower, right? So when somebody else isn't following the rules and they're getting away with it, or they don't seem to have the same stipulations as I do, there's just all these things, these levels that kind of get mixed in there, and then it really starts to feel like a double standard. And I have felt a lot of my life that I've been held to like this double standard, both from the standpoint of being Christian and then also the standpoint of being a woman. You know, like I'm not saying that like I hate men or anything like that. I'm just saying that it definitely felt like as a woman, I had to do things, you know, in a certain way, whereas a man could do things sometimes however they want. Not always true, but I noticed when it wasn't, or when it was true, right? But anyway, so whenever fear crops up, it's like you want to distance yourself from whatever it is that's making you fear, right? Which in a natural environment, like such as a saber-toothed tiger chasing you, this is a good thing, right? You want to create distance between you and whatever's trying to eat you, right? But the problem is that when we direct that towards people, people who are not out to kill you and eat you, but maybe people that we have been made to believe are evil or are practicing things that are evil or are just basically not in line with our own belief systems and processes and whatever else, right? I mean, it could be as simple as going from one culture to another and just not understanding the rules, right? And so when we create that hatred, whether it's, you know, for like a physical item, or whether it is about going to a certain place, I don't know, Christianity, how about hell, right? There's fear because nobody wants to go to hell, right? And like, you know, if you were like me, then I didn't want my friends and my family to go to hell. So then the way that I acted and the way that I interacted with people had a whole lot to do with that baseline of fear. You know, to where I mean, think about how different you are when you're in a relationship and you're just able to just be, right? And just be authentic, be the real you, and they can be the real them. You know, how beautiful is that relationship? It's great. On the other hand, if you're in a relationship where someone is constantly trying to change you or change your beliefs or, you know, win you over to some side, that's a very different relationship and it's not pleasant. It's not even pleasant to be the one trying to change the beliefs. Okay, so at any rate, my point though is that fear, I think, is so often used as a tool to manipulate and to fit an agenda. And so, like, even when I was the most staunch Christian that I knew how to be, I never agreed with this whole fear thing. Even though, like, it was in me because it was kind of drilled in there, there was just always this thing inside of me that was like, stop, that's not what this is about. It's not about fear. It's not about, you know, hating anyone. It's not about like ostracizing anyone, right? And we kind of feel like we can do that when we're in Christianity because the Bible has a lot of really interesting passages in there. And especially if you're going off of the Old Testament, which some sides of the church are like, yep, Old Testament is relevant. Some sides of the church are like, nope, Old Testament is not relevant. Can get a little confusing. But basically the overall point that I saw in there is that it still says, even with all that extra stuff in there, all the instances where, you know, God is taking out tribes left and right or whatever, you know, using David to kill all the enemies, even in those times, what I saw over and over is that we did not need to fear. And even though I definitely went down the track of fear for a long time, and believed that, you know, that I was saved and was terrified for people who I didn't know if they were saved or I didn't think they were saved, Or, you know, even if it was like, I don't know that they're, I don't know that it's interesting looking back, because of course your mind just thinks of things so much differently. But anyway, I don't like this whole thing of fear, and I never really have. And I don't like what fear causes, because nobody thinks in their right mind when they're in fear. Nobody makes great decisions when they're in fear. Nobody is a great leader when they're in fear. I just like, it doesn't help anything in human relationships, in my opinion. Like, is there caution to be had? Is there a management of energy? You know, all of that stuff. Yes. Is there listening and kind of feeling out who are your people and who are not your people? Yeah, but that doesn't have to be done with, you know, an attachment of hatred. Like, you can just not get along with someone, and it's okay. And, you know, maybe they're just not your person. But that doesn't mean that they deserve your hatred, and it doesn't mean that they deserve your judgment. You know, if they don't believe the way that you do, if they believe in very different things. I mean, like, Christianity is like, there's one God and there's one book that you should go off of, and that's fine. But that's your belief. And so, like, if somebody else is saying, well, I believe that there are spirits in literally everything, in the sky, in the moon, in the sun, in the grass, in the trees, you know, and in each and every single person, an animal, you know, and I'm going to celebrate those things because that's what I believe, that's great. Why does that make you hate anyone? You know, and I believe that, in Christianity, I felt like it was demonstrated that if someone believed in another God or a different God, that they were inherently evil. Okay, they could be redeemed, but there was one way to redeem them, through Jesus, right? But if they didn't make that choice, then they were damned to hell for all eternity. And then it was like, and they are dangerous. That was the theme that I got most of my life. Like, if it's not this way, it's dangerous. And that simply is not true. If you look at history and you look at what people, for example, let's just go to witches, okay? Because it's Halloween today. And there's a lot of stigma around witches. And, you know, there are, just like with Christianity, there's extremes and there's lesser extremes. There are, you know, broad ranges of beliefs. But the core of it is pretty much the same as across every religion or every belief system or even government, is that there's always going to be sort of this majority of people who are kind of in the happy medium side, right? And so, like, for example, the Salem witch trials, right? Famous historical event. What they don't tell you necessarily is that a lot of those women who were burned at the stake were simply burned at the stake because they followed their intuition, because they used herbal remedies to heal people, because they basically were partners with nature, right? Like, they just believed in the power of the earth and what it provides, you know, and they just wanted to use natural means, right? And then maybe they cast some spells, which, if you look at actual, like some of the things that they work with or whatever, what do they want? They're human. First of all, let's just point that out. They are human. They want the same things as humans who happen to believe in Christianity and walk that path. They're humans, okay? What do they want? They want a good, peaceful relationship, a peaceful home. They want, you know, finances, abundance coming in. They want, you know, harmony with their community. They want safety, well-being, right? Okay, so how is that any different from you and I, or they and them or whoever, right? There isn't. And so, but when you bring fear in and you don't understand where they're coming from, it can be really easy to dehumanize them, right? It can be very easy to dehumanize people who are on the other side of the fence as you, because you're not looking at and you're not asking the questions. I think that's probably the biggest thing in this day and age, is that there's so few people actually just asking questions. Like, why do you believe the way that you do? Why do you feel that way? What are you experiencing that makes you hold to that truth that you hold in your heart? You know? Because if you did ask those questions, I think you'd be really surprised at the answers. I have, for about the last, I think I'm going on 9 years now, been on a journey where I have just been questioning everything that I believe, everything that I stand for, just as many things as possible, really. And it started with an intuitive hit. You know, I always joke around and say the church left me, which that's a whole other story, and it is posted somewhere. So if you really want to find it, just let me know. I will send you the link. But after the church left, and I was sitting there talking to God, trying to figure out what in the world I want to do next. Because, like, honestly, church had kind of lost its flavor for me for many, many reasons, for many years. But I still wanted to, make the right choices and go the right path, right? But I was sitting there and I was just asking, like, what do I do? And I just heard this voice so clearly in my mind, and basically it was just like, how about you just spend some time, just you and me, for a while? And so that's what I've been doing. I have been just taking time to notice every little thing, to notice things that I'm grateful for, to notice the beauty in people that I wouldn't have noticed before, to notice the beauty of nature even more so than I ever did before, to notice the fears that were slowly starting to fall away and the guilt with it, and the growth that was happening within me. All of these things basically add up to good fruit. My grandmother, who used to be pretty much like, we were like peas in a pod, one of the things that she said to me so long ago, which has always stuck with me, is that, in the Bible you have a really, really easy barometer. It says, and you shall know them by their fruit. And you can use that for like any situation, any person, anything. And so, like, when you really sit back and start to observe, then it's like, that was when I really started to notice people that had peace, that, according to everything I had been learning, shouldn't have the same kind of peace as I had. And then I noticed that a lot of people, it seemed like, had really interesting reasons for believing the ways that they did. Reasons that I could get on board with, And basically, I've kind of used that as my barometer all along, is like, what is the fruit? What is the fruit? What is the fruit? What is the fruit? Is there growth happening? Is there more love happening? Is there joy? Is there peace? Is there love? Like, these are all good fruits, right? And so then I started to discover these tools that have always been available, but they've just always been demonized. Something like astrology, right? Now, I know you're rolling your eyes. That's fine. Never said you had to try it. I'm just saying it is a tool. And once I started to dig into that tool, it was so helpful, because basically the things that I had been hating about myself and frustrated with myself, I could look at this thing that has been literally determined since before I was born at this time and this location and all these specific details. And it was like reading off my personality, and it was true. It wasn't like oh, you're funny and you're kind and no, it was like in depth of like how I process things, how I get through, what kind of work that I would probably be good at, or, like these kinds of like details that I just never would have expected. But the thing that it did for me is that it helped me understand that it was okay to have those things, and that it was okay to function in those ways because it was already there. It was like pre-designed practically. Now, I believe in free will, but I also believe that we are coming here with a template and then we get to add to it, right? So, but my point is that once I got to see that and understand some of those things, it was like, then I could love myself better. And then when I started to look at other people's astrology, just simple little like blurbs, I didn't even have to go into super depth or detail. It was like, then I was able to understand them better, because it was like, oh, that's like innate, that's in you, so then it helped me love them better because it just gave me understanding. And that's the whole thing with fear, is that when you have understanding, you have way less fear. Because you just can look at it and be like, yeah, why is anybody afraid of that? Well, there's some things, of course, you're going to look at it and be like, yeah, I would be afraid of that, or I am afraid of that. And that's fine. But coming at it with an understanding and with the questions and with all of these things first, it has freed me from infinite amounts of guilt and shame and frustration. Like, I have just been able to walk in a much freer place. And that's like, for me personally, that is everything. Am I still struggling? Yeah. Am I still having to deal with like deep inner wounds and, old processes and ways of doing things and ways of thinking? Yes, absolutely. But I am a conscious walking this journey out. Like, I am the person who is going to break these chains. And I know that. And so I am willing to walk this walk, even though it's going through some dark places and it's going through things that are uncomfortable. This year especially has been uncomfortable, but it's because I'm learning for the first time in my life how to surrender. And the fruit of it, even though it's like, it's still sort of on this cusp of like, are we really going to feel or see the things that we're hoping to feel and see? And I believe yes. But it's like, I have had to let go of so many things that were holding me back, and that's hard. That's not easy. That's not easy for anyone to do, especially when you've got it so ingrained in your system that you're supposed to think a certain way or be a certain way or do a certain thing, So it is a journey. It's a process, but it's a beautiful one. And it's one you don't have to be afraid of. And I think that the biggest takeaway from this entire journey has been a confirmation of what I believed so many years ago. And that is, don't fear. Do not fear. We have nothing to fear. I have less fear of death now than I ever did in my entire life. I don't fear death. I don't want it. I'm not ready to go today, but I don't fear it like I did before. And that's because I've dug in and I've asked the questions, And I think that is something that is available to anyone and everyone, no matter where you're at. And I think that you will find so much more joy and love and appreciation for life and for humans and humanity the more that you ask these kinds of questions and go in it with an open mind and try. It's difficult, I know, but try and go in without the pre-planned agenda of coming out on top or right. Like, sometimes you're going to have to think about some stuff and think about, is that true for you or is it not? Does that resonate or not? How does that fruit feel? And once you get past the fear part of all of these things, you're going to be so much more easily able to tell if something is good fruit or bad fruit, or just undesirable fruit. It doesn't even have to be bad. It can just be undesirable. You just don't want it, and that's okay, right? So, I guess if I were to bring all of this home, it would be, if you're afraid of witches, why don't you go talk to one and ask them with genuine curiosity what they're doing? What is their spell for? You know, what do they think about their, what does one of their oracle cards say? Are you really going to go to hell for listening to what an oracle card has to say? Because I can tell you that a big portion of them are simply like themes of life. So, do you need peace? Do you need love? Do you need strength? Do you need, all these things? It's like it's basically the equivalent of you flipping through your Bible and then closing your eyes and put your finger on a verse, right? That's an oracle card. You're hoping for a word. That's an oracle card or a tarot card. You're just looking for a little piece of direction, a little piece of hope, a little piece of love, to know that you're seen and you're heard. And that's what oracle cards do. That's what tarot cards can do. Now, are there people who use it for doom and gloom? Yes. Stay away from those people. And not even just stay away, but just don't get a reading from them, or don't go in that direction. If you don't like it, don't do it. Doesn't mean you have to accept whatever it is that they say. I grew up so terrified of receiving words that were counter to what I believed, or of receiving, any kind of assistance from outside of one or two sources. And God is so much bigger than that. Like, do you really think the being who created this entire planet, all the planets that revolve around it, all the solar systems, and all of the planets outside of our solar system, and everything beyond, do you really think 2 tools is all he gave you to work with? Come on, just think about it. I think that he knows how he made us, he or she, whatever. I think that we are known. I think that we are so loved, so actually unconditionally loved, that there's nothing that we can do to step outside of that love. Nothing. Because immediately when you turn around, you will find love. That's the promise that I believe in. That's something that I can get behind, is that no matter where you are, no matter where you've gone, no matter what you've done, you can turn around at any moment and you will find love. You might find an uphill climb sometimes, but you will find love, and you will find whatever it is that you need, the strength, the endurance, the fortitude to move forward, to move onward and upward. I just don't believe that there's only one way to get there anymore. And that's really scary for people in my family, I know, to hear. But I do believe in unconditional love. I do believe with everything that I am that we are unconditionally loved, and that we don't need to fear anything. So that is my bottom line. That is where I come from. That is where I'm moving towards, is less and less fear and less hatred and guilt and shame. I'm moving away from those things. That's where I'm going. So I think that's about all I got to say about that. So if this is helpful, please comment, like, share, and, let me know what your thoughts are. Be polite. Obviously, don't be an asshole. But anyway, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. Happy Halloween. Don't fear.